ran.
Grandpa in his Woody station wagon outran the police.
Yeah, it's the paddy wagon, right?
You do it like they do it in the movies. You know, you have accomplices in other cars who roll away and block the cop, and you get away. Yeah.
So the station wagon, it turns out, was later found abandoned, and it was discovered that it had been stolen earlier in that night. Inside the car was a radio transceiver that had apparently been eavesdropping on radio communications between police officers from 6 different prefectures, including Osaka, Kyoto, and Kobe, which were the prefectures where
for the drop point.
Drop point. And to be clear, a prefecture, not everybody knows. I had to actually
It's a prefect is basically kind of a county is an easy way to think of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So why would they leave their transceiver in the car?
Well, you're running, right? I mean, you go quickly.
Yeah, I mean you're leaving everything behind. So I just got to get out of here.
Well, I suppose, but he shook his tail.
Yeah.
Fox-eyed man got away again.
Damn it.
Once again. That rascal.
I cannot emphasize enough how improbable all of this is.
Yeah, right.
And we're about to get a little more improbable.
Yeah.
So in August of 1985, the police superintendent of Shiga Prefecture, is that how you would say that?
I don't know.
Yeah, the Shiga Prefect, yeah.
Yeah, and the only name he was given was Yamamoto. And he committed suicide by setting himself on fire.
Not the way I would do it.
Not the way I would do it.
No, that's a bad way to go.
Yeah. And it was speculated. I'm pretty sure it was speculation. I don't think he left a note or told anybody.
I think you're right.
My impression is that it was speculated that it was because he was unable to solve the mystery of who the monster with 21 faces was.
That's kind of like taking your job a little too seriously.
A little too seriously.
But that's actually very that's very indicative of Japanese culture. Mm-hmm. Everything is personal. It is my fault that I can't solve this. And in a way, in Japanese culture, it's your fault that some of these things happen. You take on a certain level of responsibility and guilt, for lack of a better term, for why these things are going on. That's a bit of the way their culture works. So I can see it. I don't understand it.
No, I don't either.
But I know that that's how some of that works.
Yeah, so just a couple days after Yamamoto's suicide, the monster with 21 faces sent what would end up being the final message to the media. They sent it to the media. And I'm going to read it, and I super apologize if I end up sounding like a bad anime character.
do you want
all right,
me to read
Sailor
it?
Moon, let's have it.
I'll read it. Yamamoto of Shiga Prefecture police died. How stupid of him. We've got no friends or secret hidings in Shiga. It's Yoshito or Shigita.
Yoshino or Shikita? Yeah.
It's Yoshino or Shikita who should have died. What have they been doing for as long as 1 year and 5 months? Don't let bad guys like us get away with it. There are many more fools who want to copy us. No career Yamamoto died like a man. So we decided to give our condolences. We decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. If anyone blackmails any of the food-making companies, it's not us, but somebody copying us. We are bad guys. That means that we've got more to do other than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life. Monster with 21 faces. Have you guys watched Axe Cop ever?
Axe Cop? No.
That just sounds like Axe Cop to me.
That totally is Axe Cop.
And for reference, Axe Cop is written by a 5-year-old.
Joe,
I've heard about
Axe Cop.
Yeah, no, I've heard about five. Now is that an animated thing or is that?
It's kind of a faux comic series. Yeah,
it's not a comic strip though, or it's like a comic book, or
it's a faux. It's not on the internet only, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's totally bogus. It's totally.
Yeah, I remember.
Yes.
We looked at some of the stuff, and it's like this guy's kid is or his little brother or something like that.
Brother, yeah.
That's hilarious. So Axe Cop.
But that's exactly what that sounds like to me.
Yeah.
It's like a 5-year-old writing a letter from bad guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it does. And I know that we're done with the story at this point, right?
Pretty much. I mean, that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's pretty much it.
So here's my one thing about this story that really bothers me is I've done some reading on the Japanese police and their justice system. Mm-hmm. And the stories that I've read focus on Tokyo, but I mean this is kind of deals with the entire system as a whole. They always had, up until about the turn of this century, they had an amazing amazing record for solving crimes. Do you know why they had an amazing record for solving crimes?
Why?
Because they cherry-picked what they were going to solve. In other words, if you came up and said, oh my God, my brother disappeared. Oh, well, your brother's probably a drug user, so we don't care. And then my brother was found dead in an alley 2 days later. Well, your brother was obviously a drug user, so we don't have to investigate that. He overdosed. It's his fault. Like, they have this weird mentality of, if it's not an obvious answer, then we're not going to investigate it. Therefore, our numbers look really good. Mm-hmm. They also have this weird thing where they will only take on cases where they think they can get the culprit, and their entire judicial system in terms of prosecution at that time hinges upon a confession. So if I get somebody in the box, as they would say, so I get them in the room to confess, to interrogate them, they will interrogate somebody until they finally confess. And if somebody doesn't confess, they don't get it. There's been cases where people are like, I'm not going to confess to this crime. I didn't do the crime. And they don't understand it because it's sort of that cultural thing. Like, you're actually partially responsible even if you're not involved. So your brother, let's say, is a drug user. Well, that's actually kind of your fault. So you should kind of take some culpability for that. So they have this weird cultural bias where they will only go after certain things. And because of that, I'm not going to say that they're inept, but they're very slow-footed, and they're not quick on the draw. They're not creative in how they'll look at problems. So I know that what they probably did, if this is in my mind, like let's say Glico, that's the first one, right? Izakaya?
Yeah.
They probably looked at him and they put him in the box and they said, okay, what did you do? What did you do that's your fault that you got abducted? And what did you do wrong? And you should take some responsibility. And now they run this weird circular logic process, and this is very condensed. This is a very condensed issue with their investigative process, but they do some really weird things, and they cannot think outside of an extremely small box, which is what I have a lot of problems with. A case that took 1.5 years, and they had lead none. I mean, other than finding blatantly labeled candies on a shelf and a videotape and the supposed fox-eyed man.
Well,
there wasn't anything they found.
Well, I mean,
they didn't cast a net that we know of.
So actually, that's a very interesting thing that you would say. There actually are a couple theories from people around. Again, they're maybe not like the most substantiated theories, but they are very interesting.
I like the theories, but I want to put that out to people that I think that maybe they didn't really pursue this as a solid case because they didn't want to. They pursued it because they had to.
Yeah, but it's got a lot of publicity.
Yeah, so it's not an easy to solve case. So crap,
well, no,
I got to work on this thing on Monday.
They didn't have anything to go on, really.
Right, truly, like the Monster with 21 Faces, for like how horrible they were. They knew how to work the police system. They knew that the police weren't going to investigate it if they weren't sending things to the media, if they weren't doing something super public.
And I think that's a good point. Is that they wouldn't do anything that they knew they couldn't work around. I mean, obviously they were playing for fools.
I mean, obviously
look at the typewriter I used. Woohoo!
And they were, they like, look at how dumb you are. Like, oh, we're bad men. Don't let us get away with it. Ha ha ha. Oh,
mock.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if they're so bad, so like, here's a quote from their note. We decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. We are bad guys.
Yeah.
Why did they decide to forget about torturing food-making companies? Did they get paid off by every single one of them?
So actually, this is.
I think they did.
I think so.
There's a couple theories here.
All right. Well, let's run into your theories because my tirade is done.
Yeah, there aren't a whole lot of them. One of them is. Do you guys know
Shinrikyo?
Yeah.
Or Shinrikyo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
I know who they are, yes.
Yeah, so this is...
I can't pronounce it, but I know who they are.
Yeah, a cult. Really, truly a cult that carried out what I think has been dubbed the most horrific attack in Japan since the World War II.
Since the A-bomb was dropped.
Bomb, yeah, basically. And it was the 1995 sarin gas attacks in
Which
Japanese
is
subways.
friggin' terrible.
It was terrible. So sarin essentially kills you within 1 to 5 minutes of you.
Nasty stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
it just paralyzes your lungs.
Yeah, you
essentially.
suffocate.
Yeah. So what happened was it was these kind of like religious nuts who were part of this cult.
The fanatics.
Yeah, they were fanatics, and they tried to do this attack. It ended up being kind of botched, which was good. It ended up being much better than it could have been. I think
Smaller.
it only killed like 20 people, I think.
And it could have been a much larger scale.
It seriously injured. It like temporarily blinded 100 people or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and like many people
why I
were
stay out of subways.
hospitalized. Yeah, so they just like put buckets of this stuff next to subways as they were going by. You know, they could have been really, really terrifying and gotten on subway cars and opened this stuff up, and they would have killed thousands of people probably.
In the sarin gas, that was in 95?
It was in 1995. It's founded in 1984, which is the same year that the Monster with 21 Faces attack started happening.
The cult is Shinrikyo, right? Okay.
And that's a whole different... If you're interested in that, Google it. It's a story in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a good one.
There's a lot of information
there. But there is that theory circulating around. One of the other theories is that the fox-eyed man was actually a famed Yakuza member named Manabu Miyazaki. His alibi is apparently checked out. It doesn't ever say what his alibis were. And I'm not sure that the police in that time period would necessarily like super pressure a member of the Yakuza.
Well, and again, do you remember my complaint about the Japanese police system? Is that the stories that I've read that have been deep investigative stories is that I say, no, I was on holiday at this place, and they go, oh, okay, thank you very much. And they never double check.
Right.
They never double checked people's alibis. Just, oh no, I said I was here. Oh,
Yeah.
well, of course you wouldn't lie to the police.
Yeah, why would you?
Why would you lie to the police?
Yeah. So actually, I think the Yakuza theory is it's pretty popular, and I kind of like it.
I think extortion is kind of one of their specialties.
It is one of their
Yeah.
specialties. It could have been just like a small fringe group. And as it turns out, the attack stopped right when there was this huge mob war in Japan. In like the late 1985 kind of time period, there was this huge mob war that broke out. So, you know, ostensibly, if somebody were doing a side project of, hey, we're going to go attack all of these companies just for fun, you know, it kind of reads that whole, like, we're bad men, ha ha ha, ha, taunting part of the Yakuza mob, that person could have been killed, or it could have, you know, just not been feasible to spend the time to do the side project of attacking the confectionery producer companies or whatever. So I kind of like that theory. I think it's quite interesting.
Well, and that actually lends to, I don't remember, I was listening to some story recently that was dealing with some of these guys in Japan in kind of that time frame who were trying to be basically bad bikers. And they were like, we're a bad biker gang. Yeah, we're going to do all this stuff. Except it was kind of this game of one-upmanship. How close could I get to the line before I walked away, before I actually crossed that line? And suddenly consequences go on, and I can't pull back from it. You know, I'm trying to be a bad guy, and I get to this point, and then, oh, this is getting a little too real. We put these poisons out, and they found them, and it's getting a little too creepy. Okay, we're gonna actually back off because I don't actually want to be an outlaw.
It might be that, yeah, when somebody finally died, the policeman that committed suicide, that might have.
Yeah,
No.
This game is not what it was before.
Yeah.
It's no longer fun.
Now, let me ask you this: so they threatened in the original extortion attempt was with Glico, and they threatened to put cyanide-laced bags of candy on the supermarket shelves. And they pulled all those and they went through them. Did they find any that had been laced with poison?
Not as far as I know.
So the only one that got laced with poison was the second target.
As far as I know, and that could be
Morinaga.
false information.
Yeah.
But they said, yep, there's stuff on the shelves, so Glico pulled all that stuff. And then once they put all their product back on the shelves after they had like gone through it or whatever, the threat came in. Oh, yeah, you're putting that back on the shelves. Great, because we actually have a bunch of that stuff that's been tampered with that we're just going to stick on the shelves too.
But they never.
But as far as I know,
it was never released that they found tampered.
That's as
from
far
the
as I
first
know.
batch.
But I mean, it's totally possible.
It was
that
after they forgave Glico. Then that was when they found the stuff that had been laced with sodium cyanide, which was the Morinaga candy.
Yeah.
So So I mean, some of their notes. Let's see. One of these ones seem to be the loss. So why not let us help you? We'll give you a clue. We entered the factory by the front gate. Does that mean, are they basically saying, hey, we worked at the company?
Yeah.
We worked there.
It may be.
And they're, they
or
have
I'm a
little
delivery
fun.
guy, or I'm a security guard,
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to tell, right?
It's a million people that go in and out of the front gate of a factory every day.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the only other little tidbit that I found kind of interesting was the statute of limitations on the kidnapping and the poisoning ran out in 2000. And actually, shortly after that, the Japanese media started saying, "Oh, it was North Korea."
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's not. What? I mean,
yeah, it
really?
was North Korea. Well, I mean, to be fair, like North Korea is a place that, like, when found to be tunneling under a border with South Korea, they just went in and painted all the walls of their tunnels black, and they were like, "No, it was coal. We were looking for coal. Look, see all that black stuff? It's coal."
yeah.
I mean, so I'm not gonna say that this
Because you don't know what coal is, but we know what coal is.
We know what coal is. It's black stuff on the wall. Yeah. So I'm not gonna say like for 100% that this would be above the North Koreans, but I'm also not gonna say, yeah, it was definitely North Korea, because that just seems silly, and like they would have really nothing to gain from it.
Well, yeah, they would. They'd gain money. I mean,
Well, potentially, but
North Korea is short of funds.
If you're going to launch some kind of espionage, whether it be corporate or international, I mean, that just opens the gates right there.
For what?
For anybody. It could have been us. It could have been the U.S. government that was screwing with them.
Well,
it could have been, the Soviets that were messing with them. It could have been, an Australian candy company who was trying to make it in.
I think competitors, that might be one thing. But I mean,
I'm just saying,
if you're saying that it's in terms of countries, I mean,
but
North Korea
has
North Korea is, no, it doesn't. I mean, North Korea is unique. They're especially loony and gangster-like. They are the kinds of guys who would do this. Australia would never do this. The government of Australia. It's possible. But this is almost like
China. Would China not do this?
China doesn't need to do this. Korea is short on cash. They're perpetually short on cash.
Why wouldn't
they don't have an economy?
Why wouldn't any other country? Why wouldn't the British do this if they're trying to get in there to sell products there? Or they have some loony sanction they're pushing for some reason. I mean, I'm just saying. If we're gonna open up the fold to that, why focus just on Korea? Because it could be anybody. Because this is so goofy. This sounds like a black ops operation on mushrooms.
Well, no, I mean, essentially, the reason I don't think it's Korea is like Korea they're uniquely gangsterish and irresponsible. What North Korea would have done if they'd been behind this is they wouldn't have set any notes. They would have poisoned candy, killed a bunch of kids, and then after that was all over the news, then they would have they said, "Hey, it's us, North Korea. We did it. And if you don't want it to happen again, you're just going to send us suitcases full of gold and cash because we like that." That's essentially what they do now.
I'm sorry. I just love that whole, like, the idea of, like, hey, it's us, North Korea. Yep, we killed a bunch of kids.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, no, that's the kind of stuff that they do. Those guys are psycho.
The industrious leader said to do this, or whatever they call him.
Yeah, the glorious leader.
I mean, we're way off track here.
We're being super offensive at this point.
Well, no, it's not super offensive, but I'm just saying
it's not super offensive because they don't get our podcast.
If we're going to open up the door to espionage of any kind,
well, this isn't espionage. This is just blackmail.
Well, corporate espionage or blackmail, then that opens the door to anybody because nobody stood out as a suspect, which means everybody could be guilty.
I think we generally assume that like corporations, as corrupt as they are not psycho
as
enough.
can be. I
Yeah,
would say
as
corporations
they can
are,
be.
but they can.
Yeah, they're
As
not.
they can
But,
be.
but
they're not psycho enough to either actually poison a bunch of candy or even like say they're
Even
going to
threaten
poison
to,
a bunch
yeah.
of candy. I mean, you know, just like the tub of hydrochloric acid itself speaks of something actually psycho. Like that's a pretty psycho
That's kinda
thing
nutty.
to do.